Welcome, 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 everybody, to the Career Success Interview Podcast. As you're coming in, please share where you're from, what city, state, country. Super excited about today's guest. Just want to give some more folks time to chime in. As you're coming in, I'm looking at my phone to see the feed, so trying to master it all in one shot. But let me give a brief intro on this dynamic woman. Her name is Suzanne Ricci, Ricci, I think. Sorry if I pronounced the name. Always mess up your last name, Suzanne. But she is the founder of Computer Coach here in Tampa. What I love about one of her main mantras is that she's helping thousands of job seekers in Tampa find careers, which is pretty much exactly what my goal is. So our visions align so much. We've shared multiple platforms recently. I've been asked to speak on her platform, in that she does a massive amount of Zoom calls, and I'm going to ask her to share that number. But she is a dynamic woman, a super connector, a teacher, an entrepreneur. I'm sure there's a book coming sometime soon, but let me welcome Miss Suzanne to Joe. How are you?
Hi, thank you for having me. How are you?
I believe you're good. I think we had a little delay, but let's see if what about now?
How's that? Is that better?
It's catching up.
Okay.
No problem. This is live. It's what happens. But share with the folks, give them an intro about who you are, what you're doing, how you're impacting the community right now.
Sure. So I'm Suzanne Ricci. I have the pleasure of being the Chief Success Officer over at Computer Coach. At Computer Coach, we provide IT and business certification training to individuals throughout Tampa Bay, the state of Florida. Actually, right now, everything is live online, so the entire world at this point. For the last 20 years, I've helped thousands of individuals in Tampa Bay with their careers, finding their career success and helping them map out a plan to get to that. And during the pandemic, we've really focused on, as we started to see more and more individuals get laid off, we've started focusing on helping individuals with their careers, whether they are a Computer Coach customer or not. We've run quite a few webinars, networking opportunities live and open to the public for free. As of right now, by the end of July, I actually counted while we were on break, and we'll be at 150.
So 150 individual Zoom calls, educating, teaching job seekers.
Networking, yep, just about everything.
Wow, that's incredible. So if you can share the different segments, because again, I've been a part of some of the networking ones, and again, spoke on the platform with other outstanding ladies about resume do's and don'ts, etc. But share the different segments and how you set those up and the why behind it.
Sure. So there's two aspects of job seeking, right? There's one, learning how to find a job, which is very different. A lot of individuals, if you haven't had to search for a job in the last year to 2 years, it changes constantly, right? So we have our educational platform where we run webinars, which is myself generally teaching the different job search strategies. And we also run panel conversations where we invite in experts like yourself, Orlando, and others in the community to chime in so that it's not just, my opinion or my information, right? There's so much that goes into job seeking. And so there's the educational platform where we run the webinars and we run the panel conversations. And then we run quite a few networking opportunities. So we have networking opportunities that connect individuals with talent acquisition professionals or recruiters in face-to-face environments. And then we have networking events where just candidates can network amongst each other, right? A great way to uncover the hidden job market, as they say, and jobs that you may not know that are out there are by networking with others. There's a lot of strength for candidates in networking with other individuals who are job searching as well, right? It's a very unique process that individuals go through. So having others around you who are going through it as well can really help support you.
So that's a great segue, and I love that how it's broken out into different segments. So you're targeting different areas of job seekers and their concerns. So number one question, I would say, from doing 150 individual coachings or trainings and networking events, what are some concerns you're hearing direct from job seekers right now?
Sure. So when I do hear quite a few concerns, right? And generally I break them down into different areas within the job search process. So there's the sourcing of jobs, which has its own distinct difficulties, right? Then there's interviewing, and then there's even onboarding right now, which during the pandemic, onboarding is so different that it's, causing difficulties all on its own. When it comes to the sourcing areas, right now, I'm hearing a lot from candidates on how do they know if jobs are real or not? The companies will post jobs. Are they just pipelining for positions that are coming available? Is it an actual job? How much energy should they put into it if it's not really going to turn into an interview today and it's going to turn into an interview in 4 months? So there's definitely difficulties for candidates in figuring out if jobs are real or not. And there's different strategies that candidates can use to overcome that. One, I think the job boards that candidates use have a big play in that. I'm a really big, which I'm sure we're going to talk about, supporter of LinkedIn. And the LinkedIn jobs give you a lot more transparency than some of the other job boards. So I like that. And I also think during this time, it's really important for candidates to build strong relationships, trusted relationships with recruiters, staffing companies, talent acquisition professionals. The day of just submitting your resume and sitting back and waiting, those days are long gone, and candidates need to be real about that.
So all phenomenal insights, and we can talk for hours on all those topics. So how do you answer, or what are you sharing with those job seekers when it comes to, are these ghost postings, or these just, like you said, good postings to build the pipeline? As a recruiter, I know, and I apologize, folks, for the feedback. So what are you sharing with those folks? What kind of insight?
So I think the one platform that I talk on the most is building trusted relationships. If I'm a candidate and I want to work, we'll just use Sykes, for example, right? I can reach out to you. You're very accessible. Your team is accessible. If I have a relationship with you and I see a posting, then I have the ability to say, hey, is this a position you're pipelining for, or is this a position that you're actively recruiting for, right? It's two different, but I have to have that relationship with you. If I'm just applying online and I'm not hearing anything back because I don't have a connection, then I'm never going to know if it's really a position that's active or if it's pipelining. I also tell candidates, depending on the type of roles that they're looking for, right? I help individuals mainly in IT and in business. But if you have staffing companies that you work with, staffing companies usually aren't working on roles that they're pipelining, right? They're working on roles that are actively recruiting. So now is the time to be building really great relationships with the staffing companies that are out there, and really building the rapport with the individual that you're working with at the staffing company. And if you don't feel like you're meshing, well, then maybe there's a different recruiter within the company you can talk to, because the recruiter should be able to tell you if the company is actively hiring for that position.
That's a great point, because I share when I do talks about making that relationship or making recruiters your ally. One of my speeches that I do is just that. As a job seeker, don't be afraid to ask these strategic questions to get transparency, right? Because it is a relationship. If you're not asking deeper questions and uncovering those layers, then how can they trust you? You trust them. You don't want them just to sit on your resume. You want them to be active PR and marketing firms for you as they market your talents into the industry. So that's interesting. So when it comes to the sourcing, and we're stepping into basically my world a bit, but you're an expert as well. If you're speaking with employers, because I'm sure employers jump on these calls that you're having, what are they saying in terms of, have they changed their strategic targets in terms of how they communicate with job seekers? Are they being transparent? What is some of that feedback that you're getting? Because overarching, we're talking about career strategies, kind of in the midst of COVID and post-COVID. How do we educate job seekers there? What's that?
Sure. So I do spend some of my day, almost every day, talking with a variety of different employers, talent acquisition professionals. As you know, I run a podcast called Talent Acquisition Talks, which helps job seekers get insider information on various companies and their recruiting process. There's a big focus within the talent acquisition world to give a great candidate experience, right? We keep hearing that over and over. And I think that candidates need to be realistic about some companies are going to be very focused on having a great candidate experience. And those are going to be the companies that have recruiters out and about. They're in the, various networking events. The very first LinkedIn local Tampa Bay that I ran, we had recruiters from 5 different companies come to our face-to-face event. We didn't invite them. We didn't expect them. We just happened to, as the guests were coming in, we realized that there were recruiters from 5 different companies. So those 5 companies clearly had a very vested interest in having great candidate experiences, right? And I think what job seekers need to understand too is talent acquisition professionals are held to metrics as well, right? They need to meet so many candidates. They need to pull in so many applications or resumes or whatever the metric may be. So some companies have a really good focus on candidate experience. Some, unfortunately, don't. And that's where I think a lot of times the term ghosted comes from, right? So I got ghosted by a company. And my response to that with candidates is your resume should never be the first time a company sees you. And if your resume is the first time a company's seeing you and you don't have an internal connection and you're just going through the applicant tracking system, your probability of getting ghosted or not hearing back is pretty high. But if you have a relationship, which I understand can sometimes be difficult to build, and we work on a lot of different strategies for that. And myself, as someone who helps candidates going through Computer Coach, I'm constantly looking to make relationships. And even my candidates will come to me and say, do you know somebody in this company? And if I'm like, oh, no, I don't, well, then I start using my own strategies to try to meet somebody within that company. So I really feel like, candidates need to be realistic about, one, making connections, but also I think it's important to talk about networking isn't something you just do when you're job searching. Networking is something you do continuously for career success. And I talk about that quite a bit as well. So there's a difference between career branding and job seeking, right? And I think in today's day and age of job searching, we really need to remember that it takes a lot to get the ball rolling, right? To get the momentum going. But if you keep it going and you keep doing these different activities and branding and strategies, even when you're employed, it's going to be a lot easier if you do have to look for another job.
That's a great, phenomenal point. So let me touch back on candidate experience, because there may be 2 different versions of it from the employer side than the candidate side, right? So what does the candidates that you're talking to saying, it'd be nice if the company did X?
Yeah, and that's a really good point, right? There is a difference between the company's definition of great candidate experience and then also the candidate side. What the candidates want to hear overall is the candidates just want to know. They don't even care if it's a no. They just want to know if it's a yes or a no. Am I moving forward or if I'm not? I think in the ultimate candidate experience, candidates would be coached on maybe why they weren't selected to move forward. But I know that that's sometimes unrealistic, right? You can't always tell candidates why someone else was selected in the process. But from the candidate side, that's what I hear the most. They just want to know because they don't like the silence. I feel like in so many things in life, right? Silence is scary. And that's where candidates really stand, is that they want to know yes or no. And that would probably be enough.
Yep. And it's funny because I've seen a post that someone made, and I think that's what sparked me to do a Zoom call called The Current State of Staffing and Recruiting, because they said that exact point. They said it'll just be nice to know where we stand. Just communicate with us. And I get it. Coming from that world, being in that world, sometimes it can be tough to communicate to hundreds of candidates. And I get it. So that's something I think as recruiters we have to get better at, no matter what. But let's shift to networking, which is huge, right? Like you said, I think networking should become basically a lifestyle if you're trying to excel in your career, right? It shouldn't be just, like you said, inserted. In case of emergency, break the networking glass. Let me see what I can dust off and what works in today's market. So talk to us about different strategies, consistency of networking today.
Sure. And I think that's great. I love that. Don't break the glass for networking. Networking is something that we really need to do, as Dawn just pointed out on the show, right? Networking is for always. And that's really valid. But I think you can have a very strategic strategy around it. I met somebody not too long ago. They came into my world and they just had a brand new baby that was born. And I was talking to them about all these different events that were going on. And he says, I can only do 2 a month right now because of my family commitment. Well, he's employed, happily employed, not looking for another job. And I was really impressed with the strategy behind I have 2 a month, right? And so you can actually plan out your networking. Every day, face-to-face networking, you're going to get burnt out, right? That's unrealistic to think. But I think that candidates and individuals in their career can decide, can you do one morning networking event every other week, one afternoon networking event, and then one evening networking event? A lot of times people think that networking is only, happy hour after 5 o'clock. I have other responsibilities. I myself am a mom, a wife, I have things going on. So it takes a big time commitment, but it doesn't have to be, right? You have lunchtime networking, you have morning networking. So I think there's a few things when it comes to networking. One, have a plan. Not only a plan on what events are you going to attend, but a plan on what do you want to get out of the networking. Do you want to meet individuals that are within the talent acquisition role? Do you want to meet individuals that are within a specific industry? Do you want to grow your network in just your same job title? And so having a plan on the different types of ways that you would want to grow your network will help you in choosing the different events. And there's a variety of different events, right? We talked about morning, afternoon, evening events that you can choose from, having a combination of all of them. I will hear people often say that morning networking events are more productive, right? They're more serious networkers because they're up first thing, 7:30, grabbing coffee together. But I think that when it comes to individuals in their careers, they can choose the different type of networking that you want to go to. So I try to incorporate just a generic speed networking event into my networking routine, right? Because that's going to give me individuals in a lot of different industries. I'm going to meet unique individuals that maybe just aren't in tech. And then try to add on some that are specific to your industry. So for example, if you're a project manager, then are you going to, the PMI chapter meetings and their networking events? And then I guess I also coach on, if you find yourself going to events, and this happened with somebody that I had in my world not too long ago, they weren't going to the right type of events for what they were looking for. And so I think you need to be very mindful about that. It's one thing to feel comfortable. So let's say every month I go to this same networking event because I'm comfortable with it. But if I'm not getting a return from that event, maybe I need to look at a different type of event. And that's sometimes hard for individuals, right? We're creatures of habit. So but wait, I know 10 people there. I often say, I don't care who you are. It's often scary to open the door to a networking event if you don't know anyone in there, right? It's the unknown. Again, it's that silence that we talked about.
Well, there's that piece of the word work. It takes work, right? Right. And people say your network equates to your net worth. And I love that point about going outside your industry sometimes, because to stay on topic with project managers, right? If you're consistently going, you will tend to see the same people and you start to see your competition in essence, if those folks are displaced as well, then I would say shift to maybe an HR networking group, right? Because those folks may know what positions are open, and they should know what's open in their current industry or their current company. And you possibly be the only project manager, one of two, maybe three in that whole networking group. So again, shift, get outside your comfort zone. Phenomenal point, Suzanne. I love that. My next question would be, what skills should employees start developing, leveling up on now as we're advancing technology and during this so-called downtime through COVID?
That's a great question. But you know what? I do want to touch on just the networking. I just actually thought of something that would be really beneficial for candidates, not only going to the networking events, but getting involved in the events. So if you do find an organization that you really like, then ask if there's any volunteer opportunities. Get involved in putting together the events. And I think that's a really good way to uncover, as they say, the hidden job market. I had mentioned, you brought up, networking in HR organizations, and I brought up to one of my candidates, why don't you volunteer at the HR Florida event? And they were like, well, volunteer? Can I do that? And I said, well, yeah, why not? I mean, most of the time I've run quite a few events, as you know, and we're always looking for volunteers, hands that are willing to help. It's a hot commodity when you run events. And I then sat down and I talked to them and I said, well, let's, think about, why would you volunteer at like an HR Florida event or something like that? Who's going to be there? And is that the individuals that you want to meet? Well, yeah, probably, if you're job searching. So I think networking, but also trying to really get involved and give back to your community, right? The number one rule of networking is you should be giving before you're getting, right?
Exactly.
So, sorry, I thought about that talking.
That was great. Yeah, because that's the same thing. I always think go to serve first to add value versus receive. And to your point, spoiler alert, that most of these associations are filled with 100% volunteers, right? So everyone's volunteering to hopefully network, but they love what they do, etc. So phenomenal point. Volunteer for these events. You can
volunteer right now during the pandemic. There are opportunities. That's also something that I often hear people say is, well, how do I volunteer? And you can do it. I mean, events are still being run virtually, and there's still people that need to be involved.
If you reach out and they say no, I'll be shocked. They're always understaffed, no matter which association it is. So they need help. But that's a great point. So with another question would be, and we kind of touched on it, you were going into some of the strategies, but let's talk, I'm completely shift gears because you made 3 points earlier. You said sourcing, onboarding, and interview. Yeah. Let's talk about the onboarding experience from the employer, or not the employer, but the candidate side. What have you heard in terms of good or bad stories and how that needs to change?
Right. And I think right now during this, unprecedented time for the vast majority of us, right, that it really depends on if the company is a remote working company or not. So if the company is a remote working company, well, then they usually have a great onboarding process, because the number one thing that candidates really need to do when they're onboarding is build rapport and meet others within the company, right? I often coach on, you don't have to go in within the first 30, 60, 90 days and have solutions. That you really don't want to show up and be the we should person, right? You want to show up and you want to really listen and learn and see, well, why are things done like this? Is this better than what I know? You don't want to be the person that shows up with, well, at my last job, we did it this way. At my last job, we did it this way. That's a really fast way to kill your career. So having said that, I think with companies, what I hear is it really depends if the companies are experienced with remote working. If they have a remote working team, well, then they usually have policies, procedures, and ways to incorporate new employees into the teams and help them build rapport. But if they don't, and they've just had to shift and they haven't gone back to face-to-face, that can be really difficult for candidates because one, it's a new job, which you feel isolated anytime you're starting a new position, regardless, right? You feel isolated if it's face-to-face, and now even more if it's on remote. You also aren't always comfortable asking so many questions. So if it is a team that's not accustomed to working remote, well, how am I going to train? Who do I ask questions? I don't want to be the person that's bothering somebody because they're trying to get their work done. They probably have their kids at home like most of us, right? Both, mom, dad, or both significant others are working at home right now. So there's a lot of difficulties for job seekers to overcome. But I think what I hear most is just feeling like they're part of the team. And then when they go back, and let's say the companies do shift back to face-to-face, there's that obstacle of overcoming. You were onboarded and brought in while you weren't in a face-to-face environment, and all these individuals are going to be happy to see each other again, and they're going to want to have lunch because they haven't, had lunch with each other in so long. And so now how do you incorporate yourself into that without one seeming pushy or needy or desperate? And so I really think that comes down to having a great HR policy that really does help employees onboard successfully. And I hope to see companies who did hire throughout the pandemic and onboarded people in a remote environment, I hope they'll do some type of activities, almost like a second onboarding, if you will, to give individuals an opportunity to connect with their fellow colleagues face to face.
Yeah, I know one of the things we're doing at the organization I work for, Sites, is that a welcome back thing we're developing at the local level. That hopefully that it just catches because it's a good program that we're trying to do. So it's whether it's small things like welcome kits, hand sanitizers, T-shirts, everything for those that can come back to the site whenever we transition back. But that's a phenomenal idea, and I'm glad again to be a part of an organization that does that. That's looking forward to say, okay, we need these people, we care for them, and all this stuff. It's not just put a body in a seat. It's how do we get them back safely, so there's no lag time in their transition back. So that's a phenomenal point for employers to grab a hold on to. So let's get into maybe some of your top strategic job search advice that you give job seekers. What would you say number one is?
For job seekers, my best advice is network, but do that continuously. And then 2, employ techniques to uncover the hidden job market. Because if you are just going to, right, they have the spray and pray practice of applying online, right, where you just send out your resume in massive quantities. The very first thing I talk about is 1, have a plan. You have to have a job search plan. Once you have a plan, then you can start doing networking for what I call backdoor approaches, which is really trying to uncover the hidden job market. It would be great if you could position yourself in a way that recruiters are coming to you where you're not doing all the legwork, right? And you can do that as a job seeker, but you can't just do it when you're job seeking. And that's really important. I think when it comes to uncovering the hidden job market, 1, I talked about this yesterday. Being laid off can be emotionally very stressful for candidates. And I think that it's really important for candidates to take a very, mindful look into themselves on how are they feeling emotionally? Are they giving off negative vibes? And I had someone that I was coaching last year who he was just cranky, honestly. And he was cranky because he worked at the same company for 19 years. He was never going to leave that company, but they had a massive layoff. But the situation is what it is, right? Layoffs aren't because of something you've done. It's just unfortunately a situation that companies find themselves in. And it's really important for candidates to overcome their feelings and their emotions, because when they're interviewing for the next companies, they don't want to be seen as negative. You want to be very mindful about how many times you're bringing up the word layoff if you're interviewing, because it can be seen as negative. Like, well, do you want to work for my company, or do you want to go back and work for the last company that you were just with? So one, having a plan. Two, making sure that you're, emotionally okay. And if you need to talk to somebody, then please do that, because it's really important that you are at peace with the situation that you're in. And then that will help you when you're interviewing for other companies. And then I love the idea of job transition groups. I like job transition groups and getting involved in learning how to job search. There's a lot of misinformation out there when it comes to job searching, right? Even just simple a Google, how to set up my LinkedIn profile. Well, there's a difference between setting up a LinkedIn profile for career branding. I'm just working on my career, I'm happy where I'm at, and actually job seeking, right? There's two different ways to set up your LinkedIn. So joining in on webinars and learning how to job search, even job transition groups, will really help individuals learn about the modern job search strategies. There's a lot of, I just create my resume and I put it out there. Well, that's from quite some time ago, right? There's a lot of different ways to find jobs. And I hear more and more from candidates, I wish I would have been to these job search strategy webinars. I wish I would have learned how to find a job before. I spent 6 months doing it all wrong. And then they get the strategies, and then all of a sudden they start having interviews. From a job candidate perspective, from candidates' perspective, the more interviews you have, the more likely you are to have offer letters, right? So you really need to focus on strategies that get your resumes in front of recruiters that can then turn into interviews, which will then turn into opportunities for you. So
Phenomenal. Love it. So I have a question for you from one of the viewers, and I'll pop it up for you. I believe her name is Sequoia Rollins. She's asking for you to break down having a job plan. What are some details to that?
Sure. I love that question. So thanks for asking that. So when it comes to a job plan, one, I often will joke and call it pick a lane. What job titles are you even looking for? And do you know all the job titles that are associated to your skill set and to what you've done? So sometimes just doing a simple Google search on what other job titles are cloud integration specialists known by, or what job titles are out there for systems administrators. You'll find a list of job titles that are the same tasks, but every company calls them something different. Often when it comes to like startups or newer companies, they'll have more fun, funky titles, where older companies will have more traditional titles. But from a job candidate perspective, one, making sure you know what job titles you're looking for. It's very scary for me when I talk to someone and I say, hey, well, what type of opportunity are you looking for? And they say, whatever, I don't really know. Well, if you don't know, how are you going to get somewhere, right? So that's the first thing. Then I often coach on what industries are you passionate about? What industries do you have experience in? It doesn't have to be one, but for example, if you like healthcare and you want to be in IT in healthcare, or project management in healthcare, you can really, with branding techniques, make yourself stand out. I know some on the call today aren't in Tampa Bay, but in particular, and I know that this is everywhere, but I happen to know in Tampa Bay, there's a few individuals that are so well networked and considered really great in their industries that they're never applying for a job. If they want another job, they just put it out on their LinkedIn, they call a few people, and they have opportunities. And that's where you really want to get yourself to. And you can do that if you know what industries you want to work in. And I'm not saying you can't change.
Hey, let me jump in right there, Suzanne, because I believe you just answered a question for one of the viewers. And they had a question that says, I read that you should always be in the job market. So you just answered it, so I'll refresh it. I'm sorry, I can't see who asked the question, but I think you should have an in-depth network that if an opportunity comes up, to Susan's direct point, you're necessarily not saying, hey, I'm open to new opportunities, but it may come through just your network versus you posting and putting on your profile or saying open to opportunities, right? So I think it's the network, not necessarily saying you're always applying to jobs and things like that, but the depth of your network and the experience of your network does lend itself to maybe some opportunities that may come because they see how much experience you have and what your impact is in the world.
Sure. And in addition to that, that's a great point that the user just made. You should always be in the job market. I don't think that that's necessarily I'm actively looking to leave my job, right? There's something about consistency. And if you're happy with where you are, well, then I don't think you should, change your LinkedIn profile to job searching or whatever. But what I take away from that, always be in the job market, is knowing what's happening in your industry and in your field. So for example, if there are new technologies that are coming out, you should be learning those technologies, even if your company isn't using them, because you should really want to continuously be growing, right? If there's new credentials that are coming out, or let's say, again, the project management example is very easy. If you are in project management and now you're at that, 5-year threshold or whatever, adding on your PMP so that you can grow and get better. That's what I take away from always being in the job market. Not necessarily that you should always be looking for jobs or applying to jobs, to your point, Orlando, but you should always know what's going on in the job market. Is there something disruptive coming in your industry? Is there something that your industry can be augmented or automated by that you really need to step up your skills and add on some skills that can make you more productive? Or better suited if you do have to find another job.
Another question from Mr. Jose Powell. I believe he's asking for his daughter. So my daughter will be graduating from college in December. What employment opportunities will there be for recent graduates, and how should they approach the job search? Great question. Appreciate that.
Sure. Great question, Jose. One, I hope there are opportunities for your daughter. I think that there are always opportunities in the job market. It's about uncovering them. So if my daughter was graduating from college, I think my suggestion would be, one, get an internship. And then, so that's my first suggestion. One, get an internship now so that you have some real world experience, and internships can often turn into, job offers. So that's one. And two, what can your daughter do to differentiate herself from the other, whatever school she's at? Let's say, there's 30,000 people graduating with that same degree. What can your daughter do to differentiate herself from everyone else? So one, internships and getting real world experience. Two, what type of additional certifications or credentials can she add on that would differentiate herself from everyone else? And then three, start networking. There's a gentleman in Tampa. He is graduating from USF, from the cybersecurity program. He did all three of those things and got an amazing job offer, relocating to Texas, which I'm so sad to see him leave the Tampa Bay market. But for him, he did it brilliantly because he was out networking. He knew all of the recruiters in different companies. He knew all of the people within the tech community in Tampa Bay. He added on certifications and he had his internships. And I think those three items will really help your daughter. And right now, although there's not many face-to-face networking events going on, there are a ton of virtual networking events. And I would suggest that if you Meetup is a great website to find different events that are going on, and Meetup has all kinds of virtual events for every particular industry or whatever your job of choice is. Meetup has some great resources on it, and that's meetup.com.
Yeah, and I would also add to that, Powell, is that make sure that your daughter has a clear focus of what she wants to do, regardless of her degree. Because if it's a business degree, right, that's so broad. You can go business analyst, marketing, whatever it may be. But focus is first, and then maybe she could connect with me. I don't want to put Suzanne on the spot. Can she reach out to you, Suzanne, as well?
Oh, of course. Yeah, of course. I help.
Because she hosts. If you join late, Jose, she hosts weekly, if not daily, Zoom calls for networking and stuff. So that's a great way for her to get plugged in and meet some professionals that may be doing what she wants to do already.
I would also recommend that you start using branding techniques on LinkedIn So writing articles, writing posts, sharing content about whatever industry she's going to be in. Because one thing about LinkedIn is that once we connect, I can see everything you're posting, and I can see if you're passionate about a topic, if you really care about what it is that you want to pursue. And I think that that's really important. Actually, that came out in one of my Talent Acquisition Talk podcasts when I was interviewing a talent acquisition manager, that's what they look for. If someone says I'm passionate about, cloud, and then they go to their LinkedIn and it's all about, something else, then the question on, are you really passionate, comes up. So you can share resources. Even as a student, she doesn't have to hold back on finding resources and sharing her opinions and really contributing to the community.
You know what I would love to see, Suzanne, if a new graduate were to vlog their career journey on LinkedIn, right? Professionally saying, hey, I'm hunting. These are some of the techniques. Here's what's worked, and kind of leave footprints for their peers. That would be phenomenal. I would love to see something like that out there. I think Mr. Armando Gonzalez is trying to reach you. He's saying, I need to get an appointment with you, Suzanne.
You're welcome to have an appointment with me. Just you can connect with me on LinkedIn. Once you get a reply email from me, you have my cell phone number. So just reach out to me.
Also, and I'm looking further, and it says I'm using my husband's phone number. So I guess it's the wife of Armando Gonzalez. That's networking right there. She's just putting it all out there.
Yeah. Thanks for coming in today. Oh.
I'm sorry, I was on mute. So her name is Christina Gonzalez.
Perfect. Yeah. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. That's a great way to network. She was just, I'm using my husband's phone. I need to connect. Let's make it happen. There you go, Christina. Any last points, nuggets? Well, not nuggets. I always like to say diamonds. We have no time for nuggets that you want to share with job seekers out there.
Yes. So when it comes to my last and most important piece of advice for job seekers is upskill. Make sure that you are adding on skills during your transition. You're going to get asked in the interview. It seems to be like the icebreaker question. So what have you done since, during your transition, or what have you done since you were working most recently? And the great answer to give is, I upgraded my skills to be a better asset to the next organization I join. The wrong answer is, I did nothing, or I cleaned out my closets, or as I joke, I sat on the sofa and eat bonbons, but you have to be old enough to understand that. So upskill. And right now, because of the COVID situation, there are grants that can cover 100% of the cost of upskilling in quite a few different areas, not just IT, but at Computer Coach, we do work with grant opportunities for individuals. If you are looking to upskill, you could, if you qualify, get 100% of the training, certifications, books, everything for no money out of pocket if you qualify for one of the grants. And there are an abundance of grants right now. And those should be anywhere you are, not just in the Tampa Bay area. I work with them in Tampa Bay, but if you reach out to me, I can help direct you to where you could figure out if there are opportunities to upskill. Because upskilling is what's going to set you apart from everyone else that's also in the same situation.
Now, are those grants primarily for those that are displaced or furloughed, or for working and professionals as well?
So there's different types of grants out there, and that's a great question. There are grants where if you have been impacted specifically by COVID, there are grants if you are accepting unemployment, there's grants if you're low income, and then there's also grants if there's any, decision makers on the call today. There's grants for companies that can get to be able to upskill their employees. So there's grants all around. There's lots of different opportunities. I think a lot of times people don't realize how many opportunities are out there, but that comes back to what we've talked quite a bit about today, right? Networking. That's the best way to grow and to learn. I learn so much from the people around me every day that I'm just so thankful for them.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Suzanne. So if you want to share where these folks can connect with you, your podcast, everything, go right ahead. The floor is yours.
Sure. So you can reach me at Suzanne, which is SUZANNE @computercoach.com. And I can put that in the chat. And then you can also find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. And I'm just Suzanne Ricci on LinkedIn. Maybe if you're not in the area, it's going to be Suzanne Ricci, Tampa, Florida. But send me a connection request. I am open to connect. Again, I love to learn. I love to grow. And I love to help others. So.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. And again, she has a podcast that absolutely downloaded called Talent Talks, right? Am I saying that correct?
Yeah, so Talent Acquisition Talks, and you can download that on iTunes, you can download it on Spotify, and and if you want to, so that podcast is specifically designed to help job seekers get insider information into the hiring process. But if you have any companies that you would love to see interviewed on Talent Acquisition Talks, do reach out to me, because I would love to make sure that I'm interviewing companies that job seekers and job candidates are looking to learn more about. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Suzanne. Appreciate your time, appreciate your wisdom. And folks, we look forward to seeing you next week on the next Career Success Interview Series. Talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me. Bye-bye, everyone.